The Solace glided gracefully through the vast silence of space, a gleaming beacon of peace among the stars. Its hull shimmered with an ethereal glow, reflecting the deep abyss of the cosmos. This was no ordinary villa, it was Earth's flagship hospital ship, an enormous, self-sustaining space station designed not for combat, but for care. It was a symbol of humanity's best intentions, a floating sanctuary of healing for the sick, the injured, and the displaced. Captain Risalis stood at the helm, her sharp gaze tracing the outlines of distant constellations on the star charts. As the commander of the Solace, she was well aware of the ship's significance, and not just for Earth's citizens, but for those from across the galaxy who sought refuge. The Solace was a place where the weary could rest, and the wounded could recover. Yet even in the serenity of space, danger lurked, often in the form of silent, invisible threats. "Captain, we've received an anomaly signal." Lieutenant Werner's voice broke through her thoughts, the urgency in his tone unmistakable. His hands hovered over the console, his eyes scanning the data. "It's coming from a nearby sector, just under 2 parsecs away. The frequency is strange." Captain has scrambled. "It doesn't match any known distress signal patterns." Rhea frowned, turning her attention to the navigation display. There was nothing nearby that could explain such a signal. No space station, no trade route, not even a ship. It seemed a broken bar out of place. The Solace had long been known to patrol the safer sectors of space, far from the known conflict zones. But even here, in the quiet expanse of the frontier, there were whispers of unrest. "Put it on the screen," she ordered. Werner worked quickly, his fingers a blur on the console. A small holographic display flickered to life in the center of the bridge. The signal was faint, its source location far from any known space traffic lanes. The data, once translated, revealed little but confusion, a message of distress, mixed with coded bursts of military chatter. "It's definitely a distress call, Captain, but it's a broken bar," garbled Werner said, shaking his head. "The encryption is too advanced." "It's not from a civilian ship." Rhea studied the screen. "Can we triangulate the signal's origin?" Werner nodded, his fingers dancing across the interface. "Yes, Captain, it's coming from a derelict ship just outside the outer rim of the Nebulan cluster. The ship appears to be in distress, major system failures. No signs of life via broken bar, yet the signal persists." Her mind raced. A derelict ship in this sector was unusual enough, but to have a distressed signal emanating from it, especially one cloaked in military-grade encryption, that felt like a red flag. The Nebulan cluster was a vast, unexplored region, and many ships had gone missing in these parts over the years, often lost to the unknown dangers of deep space. "Send a recon team," she ordered, her voice tight. "Prepare the Solace for a detour. We'll investigate the source of this signal." Werner hesitated for just a moment before responding. "Captain, if this is a trap, it could be an ambush." "We're not equipped for combat." "I'm aware of that," Rhea replied, her eyes narrowing, "but we cannot ignore this. Too many lives could be at risk." The tension in the room was palpable as the crew began preparations for a detour. Medical staff began securing the non-essential patients, moving them to safer, more fortified areas of the ship. The Solace wasn't meant to face down pirates or military forces, and the thought of being caught in an ambush weighed heavily on Rhea's shoulders. As they altered their course, Rhea stood at the bridge, watching the star charts slowly shift. Her mind wandered back to her own experiences, both the calm and the chaotic moments that had defined her career. She'd served on various military vessels, once a promising officer before she chose the path of healing, but deep down, she knew that the call to arms was never far away, and she could no longer deny the responsibility she bore as a commander of Earth's greatest medical ship. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates of the derelict ship." Werner's voice broke her reverie. Rhea stood straighter, steeling herself. "Bring us in closer. Keep weapons systems on standby, but hold fire unless absolutely necessary." The Solace crept through space, its engines humming softly as it neared the shipwreck. The derelict vessel was barely visible against the blackness of space, a faint shadow in the distance. It had once been a large, well-equipped ship. Rhea could see that even from a distance, though time and neglect had clearly taken their toll. Parts of the ship were scorched, twisted metal protruding from every angle. The once pristine hull was marred by impact craters and the wear of years of isolation. "Shields up," Rhea said, her voice firm. "Prepare the boarding team. We'll need to find the source of that signal. And fast." The Solace slowly approached the wreck, the stars flickering in the background like distant fires. Despite her orders, the ship's atmosphere remained tense, every crew member fully aware of the risks. They were about to board an unknown wreck, with no idea of what dangers awaited them inside. As the ship docked with the derelict vessel, the airlock seals engaged with a deep mechanical hiss. A small team of engineers and security personnel stood ready to disembark, led by Lieutenant Harris, a seasoned officer who had trained for exactly this kind of mission, although no one had ever expected to be called on for such a task aboard a hospital ship. "Stay close, everyone," Harris said over the comms, his voice low and steady. "We don't know what we're walking into." The team moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the eerily silent corridors of the derelict ship. The walls were covered in a thin layer of dust, and the air was stalely unmistakable signs of abandonment. The faint hum of the Solace's systems outside contrasted sharply with the oppressive stillness within the wreck. Rhea stayed in constant communication with Harris. "Report your status," she urged. "We're moving through the main hall, Captain," Harris replied. "Everything seems intact, but there are signs of an evacuation. This ship was abandoned in haste. There are personal belongings left behind, as though the crew just vanished." "Keep moving forward," Rhea ordered. "Find the source of the signal, and be ready for anything." Minutes stretched into hours as the team ventured deeper into the wreck, uncovering more and more unsettling clues. Parts of the ship were burned out, others had been intentionally disabled. It was as if someone had tried to strip it of all value before abandoning it. As they neared the ship's central command deck, Harris's voice crackled through the comms once more, this time with a note of urgency. "Captain, you need to see this. We've found something." Rhea's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "The signal," Harris said, his voice tight. "It's coming from a central terminal, a broken bar, but it's not what we expected. This isn't a distress signal, it's a message." "Get back to the terminal," Rhea instructed. "I'll be there shortly." Rhea felt her pulse quicken as she prepared to board the shuttle and make her way to the wreck. Whatever they had found, it was no ordinary signal. She had a sinking feeling that the truth behind this discovery was far more complex than she had initially realized. By the time Rhea and her team arrived at the central terminal, the atmosphere in the command room was thick with tension. Harris stood over a series of glowing terminals, his face pale. The room was filled with static, and the air hummed with an electric tension that sent a chill down Rhea's spine. "Captain, we were right," Harris said, his voice shaking slightly. "This ship was part of something bigger, something a broken bar far more dangerous." Rhea stepped forward, scanning the terminal's data with a practiced eye. The scrambled message, once decoded, revealed a chilling truth that this wasn't a simple distress signal. It was a warning. And it wasn't just about the derelict ship. "We've found something," Rhea murmured, as her eyes scanned the final, encrypted message. "It's a fleet from beyond Earth's borders, and it's on its way here." The corridors of the Solace seemed unnaturally silent as Rhea made her way to the command deck. The weight of what had just been uncovered hung heavily in the air, and every step felt like it carried the burden of what was to come. The discovery of the wrecked ship, the encrypted signal, and the warning message all pointed to a chilling conclusion that she couldn't ignore. Something was coming, something far more dangerous than anything Earth had faced before. Rhea had been a part of the Earth Navy once, before she had transitioned to this peaceful life as the commander of the Solace. Back then, she'd trained for war, participated in skirmishes and confrontations, but she had long since abandoned those days. Now, she was a caretaker, a protector of the vulnerable, and yet here she was, thrust into a conflict that felt out of place in her current reality. "Captain, the recon team is en route back to the Solace," Lieutenant Werner's voice echoed through the comms. His tone was tinged with uncertainty, something rare for him. "They've confirmed that the signal is indeed originating from the wreck. However, they haven't yet determined what the message is exactly. The encryption is more sophisticated than anything we've encountered before." Rhea felt a jolt in her chest. "Any indication of what it means?" "Not yet, Captain, But there's something else. We've been getting strange readings from the wreck's core systems. Unstable power fluctuations, strange energy signatures that don't match anything we have in our database. It's like something is dormant, a broken bar waiting. Ria's instincts flared. The Solace was a humanitarian ship, designed to be a sanctuary, but it had been retrofitted over the years to carry a variety of advanced technologies for emergency situations. While the ship's primary mission was to heal, the fact remained that she had weapons and systems that could defend her if needed. The unknown energy readings coming from the wreck were troubling, but they also confirmed something that had been nagging at Ria's thoughts for hours. Whoever had abandoned this ship had done so in a hurry, leaving behind more than just personal belongings and equipment. They had left a powerful, dangerous secret. "Lieutenant," she replied, her voice firm, "we're going to need to get to the bottom of this. Gather the team, I'll be on the bridge in 15. As Ria stepped onto the bridge, the ship hummed around her, the soft whirring of the engines a constant reminder of their journey through the stars. But today, the hum seemed more oppressive than usual. The Solace had always been a vessel of peace, but now it felt like a ship on the edge of something much darker. The situation was quickly escalating, and the clock was ticking down. Ria sat at the helm and turned her attention to the crew. Lieutenant Werner was already at his station, his fingers flying over the control panels as he monitored the recon team's return. Ensign Claire stood by the tactical station, her sharp eyes flicking back and forth between the various readouts on her screen. "We've received additional data from the wreck, Captain," Werner began, his tone businesslike despite the palpable tension in the air. "It's coming in faster now, but it's still fragmented. The message is a warning, and there's something else, a broken bar, a countdown." Ria's pulse quickened. "A countdown? What does that mean?" "It's unclear, but it's tied to the encrypted signal," Werner replied, his face tense as he worked to decrypt the last of the message. "It's like the ship was intentionally left to deteriorate, with some kind of final protocol in place. We believe that it's connected to the fleet mentioned in the message." Ria leaned forward, her brow furrowing. "What fleet?" Werner looked up at her, his face grave. "The message is mostly garbled, but from what we can decipher, it talks about an invasion, a fleet that is heading towards Earth, Captain. They've been waiting for a signal to trigger a final strike. And it looks like that signal came from this ship." A chill ran down Ria's spine. She had heard whispers of alien factions on the fringes of known space, but nothing had ever seemed concrete. She had hoped that such things were simply rumors, myths told by desperate colonists or old war veterans. But the truth was now staring her in the face. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was far from the only force vying for dominance. And Earth, for all its accomplishments and advancements, was about to become a target. "This is a problem," Ria muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. "If this fleet is as advanced as this technology suggests, we might not have the firepower to deal with them." Claire stepped forward, her voice steady. "Captain, should we consider sending out a distress signal to Earth Command? We might need reinforcements." Ria shook her head, her eyes narrowing. "We don't know enough yet. I want to know who we're dealing with, what kind of fleet is coming. We need more time. We need to figure out how to stop this countdown and secure whatever is left of the wreck's data." Werner's fingers paused on the console. "Captain, the energy readings have just spiked. Whatever's in that wreck or whatever they left behind has just activated." The Solace shuddered violently, and the lights flickered as an alarm blared throughout the ship. "Status report," Ria barked. "Captain, we've detected a massive surge of energy from the wreck," Werner said, his voice strained. "It's not just a signal anymore, it's a beacon, a call." "To whom?" Ria demanded, standing up from her chair. "To whoever is out there, Captain," Werner replied, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Whoever was supposed to answer the signal. The countdown, it's already started." Ria's heart pounded in her chest. There was no more time. They were no longer in control of the situation. The derelict ship had activated something that was calling to a fleet, and that fleet would soon arrive. "Get us out of here," Ria ordered. "Plot a course to the outer edge of the system, away from Earth. We need to buy some time and get our defenses ready." Before Werner could respond, Claire spoke up, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "Captain, there's a second signal coming through. It's coming from deeper in the wreck. It's like a backup transmission, one that wasn't included in the initial message. Rhea's eyes widened. What does it say? Claire worked quickly, her fingers flying across the console as she decoded the second transmission. The tension in the room was palpable as they waited for the final answer. After what felt like an eternity, Claire looked up, her face pale. It's from the same fleet. Buta Broken Bar. It's not a fleet we've encountered before. Thyri Broken Bar demanding our surrender. Rhea's jaw tightened. Surrender? To who? Claire swallowed hard before answering. It's a species we've never encountered, Captain. They call themselves the Vaeyun. They're from the far side of the galaxy, and their forces are said to be unlike anything we've ever seen. They're known for their ruthless efficiency, and they won't hesitate to destroy us if we don't comply. Rhea clenched her fists at her sides. This was worse than she had imagined. The Vaeyun were not just another alien racia, they were a conqueror species, feared throughout the galaxy for their brutal expansionist tactics. They had been rumored to be gathering in the outer reaches of known space, but no one had ever confirmed it. Now, their arrival was imminent. We're going to have to fight, Rhea said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. But we don't know their full strength. We need to know what we're up against. Werner nodded, his eyes dark with concern. Captain, they're already on their way. I'm tracking their fleet. They're faster than we expected. Rhea's mind raced as she took in the new information. The Solace had never been designed for combat. It was equipped with defensive systems, yes, but it was a hospital ship, an oasis in the darkness of space, not a warship. But as she stared at the data streaming across the screens, she knew that the time for peace had passed. Prepare the ship, Rhea ordered. We'll need every advantage we can get. We can't afford to be caught off guard. Her voice was calm, but beneath it lay the iron resolve of a leader who would do whatever it took to protect her crew, her patients, and her home. The countdown was nearing its final moments, and soon the Vaeyun would arrive. But Rhea would not go down without a fight. As the Solace shifted course, Rhea stared out into the infinite expanse of space, her heart pounding with the weight of what was to come. The galaxy was about to be thrown into chaos, and the first battle of this war would be fought here. She wasn't ready to face the Vaeyun, but she would be damned if she let them destroy everything she had worked so hard to protect. And so, with the countdown ticking, the Solace steeled itself for the fight of its life. The Solace's engines hummed ominously as Rhea stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen. In the distance, the wreck of the derelict ship was still visibly silent, brooding, its hull a twisted mass of charred metal and decaying structure. But the wreck wasn't the source of her focus anymore. The true danger was out there, somewhere, beyond the wreck and beyond the known boundaries of space. The Vaeyun fleet, an unstoppable juggernaut, was coming. Rhea had always been one to make quick decisions, but this felt different. The stakes had escalated beyond anything she had prepared for, and she could feel the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. The Solace was a hospital ship, built to save lives, not to fight. The weapons systems had been installed as a precaution, not as a means to wage war. But now, with the Vaeyun fleet fast approaching, it seemed the Solace would have no choice but to do what it was never designed for: a fight. Captain, Werner said from the tactical station, his voice tight with tension, we've confirmed that the Vaeyun fleet is on an intercept course. They're coming in faster than expected. They'll be here in less than 12 hours. Rhea didn't need to ask the question. She already knew the answer. The Vaeyun were ruthless. The message they had received from the derelict ship was clear. This wasn't a mere reconnaissance mission. The Vaeyun had been waiting for the right moment, and the signal from the wreck had been the trigger. If the Solace didn't act quickly, the Vaeyun would arrive and begin their invasion with no mercy. We don't have much time, Rhea muttered, turning away from the view screen. Prepare all non-essential crew and patients for evacuation. Move them to the auxiliary escape pods. We need to ensure that as many lives as possible are saved, no matter what happens. Understood, Captain, Werner said, his voice unwavering. He began issuing orders to the rest of the crew, but Rhea couldn't shake the feeling that they were already running out of time. Minutes later, Rhea descended to the lower decks of the Solace, her mind racing. She passed through the medical bay, where patients lay in beds, unaware of the impending danger. Some had already been evacuated to the more secure areas of the ship, but many remained behind, too sick or injured to be moved quickly. Rhea's heart ached as she passed them. knowing that their survival, as well as the survival of the rest of the crew, would depend on the decisions she made in the coming hours. The medical bay was in orderly chaos as the staff moved quickly to prepare for the worst. Doctors and nurses alike seemed unfazed by the situation, continuing to administer care even in the face of impending danger. They had always been trained to handle crisis situations, but Rhea knew this was different. This wasn't just a medical emergency, it was an existential threat to everyone aboard the Solace. She stopped by a bed where one of the patients, a young woman recovering from a severe injury, lay unconscious. Her injuries were severe, but she had been stable for days. Rhea looked down at her, unsure of what to say, or if there was anything that could be done to ensure her survival. "Doctor, how are we holding up?" Rhea asked, her voice softer than she intended. Dr. Klein looked up from a chart and offered a strained smile. "We're doing everything we can, Captain, but if it comes down to a full evacuation, we'll need to prioritize the most critical patients." Rhea nodded, her face grim. "I understand. We'll get them out, I promise." "Thank you, Captain," Klein said, her voice filled with a rare hint of vulnerability. Rhea felt a pang of guilt. She had known many of these people for years, and the thought that she might not be able to protect them in the coming conflict made her stomach turn. But she had no time for hesitation. The Vaeyun fleet was drawing closer, and every second counted. Back on the bridge, the crew was hard at work, coordinating their next steps. Lieutenant Harris, the officer in charge of the ship's security, was strategizing with the crew, trying to organize the defense and ensure the ship was as prepared as possible for an incoming attack. "Captain, we've patched into the ship's primary defense systems," Harris said, his voice low. "We've got a minimal chance of holding off the Vaeyun fleet with the weapons we have on board, but we can buy some time. We've fortified the most critical sections of the ship, but if they manage to breach the hull, we'll be in serious trouble." Rhea's eyes flickered to the holographic display in front of her. The defense grid had been activated, and small clusters of weapon stations were now online, ready to engage any hostile ships that approached the Solace. The ship's primary defenses, mostly shielding and evasive maneuvers, would have to do for now. There was little they could do to stand against a full-scale invasion. "What's our plan if they breach?" Rhea asked. "We fall back to the escape pods," Harris said firmly. "We'll buy as much time as we can for the patients and the crew, but we'll need everyone to be on standby." Rhea didn't respond immediately. She couldn't afford to let doubt creep into her mind. The next few hours were going to test every ounce of her leadership, and failure was not an option. She would not allow the Solace to fall. "Keep me updated," she said finally. "We need to be ready for anything." As the countdown ticked closer to the Vaeyun fleet's arrival, Rhea sat in her captain's chair, her mind a whirl of conflicting thoughts. Every scenario she played out in her mind felt like it could lead to disaster. The Solace wasn't meant to fight. The ship's weapons were designed for defense, not offense. Even with the war fleet that had been secretly stowed aboard, there was no guarantee that it would be enough. Werner approached the tactical station, his face drawn with concern. "Captain, I've been monitoring their fleet's progress. They're not slowing down. In fact, they're accelerating toward us. We need to assume that they're aware of our position and that they're preparing to engage us as soon as they're in range." Rhea nodded grimly, her eyes scanning the data. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We'll have to fight to buy time. We need to protect the patients at all costs." Werner hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Captain, the backup signal we intercepted earlier is still coming through. We've been able to decode part of it. It's a direct order from the Vaeyun leadership. They're not just after the Solace. They're after Earth. They intend to wipe us out, and they've already begun mobilizing." Rhea felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The Vaeyun were not just invading, they were preparing for a full-scale assault. The Solace was simply the first target in a much larger war. "Any intel on their fleet strength?" she asked. "Minimal," Werner replied. "We know that they're moving in formations, but their ships are unlike anything we've ever encountered. We're picking up energy signatures that don't match any known technology. They have advanced weaponry, and they're capable of launching precise strikes from a distance." "Great," Rhea muttered. "Just what we need." "Captain," Ensign Claire spoke up, her voice steady. "I've been scanning their fleet's trajectory. They're on course for the Solace now, but their approach seems to follow a pattern. They're not charging directly, they're slowly circling us, almost as if they're waiting for something. Rhea frowned, turning to face her. Waiting for what? I don't know, Captain, Claire replied, her brow furrowed. But they're definitely preparing for something. We need to stay vigilant. If they're stalling, it could mean they're assessing our defenses, or they're waiting for a better position to attack, Rhea mused. Exactly, Claire agreed. We need to move fast. If we can't outgun them, we'll have to outmaneuver them. Rhea stood, pacing the length of the bridge. She could feel the weight of her crew's expectations on her shoulders. The Solace had never been meant for war. It was a ship of mercy, of healing. But in that moment, she understood what it meant to fight for something greater: her crew, the patients they protected, and her home. All right, Rhea said, her voice steady and firm. We've got no choice. We'll fight. We'll use every trick we know. We may not have the firepower, but we've got something they daunt our resolve. We will not go down without a fight. The crew looked at her, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew what was at stake, and they were ready to stand with her. The battle for Earth had begun, and the Solace would be the first line of defense. As the Vaeyun fleet approached, Rhea knew that the coming hours would define the future of humanity. The countdown was no longer just a warning, it was a race against time. The Solace had never been prepared for this, but Rhea had prepared herself for one thing: survival. And if they were going to survive this fight, they would do so together. The battle for Earth had begun,